Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kilowatt, a podcast about electric vehicles, renewable energy, autonomous driving, and much, much more. My name is Bodhi, and I am your host. And on today's episode, we are going to talk with Kerry Murphey, who's one of the hosts of the Final Lap Weekly podcast, which is all about NASCAR. Kerry hosts that episode with Toby Christie, and I'm laughing because I called Toby Tom in the episode, and Tom is one of the hosts of the Consumer Guide podcast. So my apologies to Toby, and I'm going to apologize for this at the end as well, but I'm very embarrassed by it. But yes, Toby and Kerry host the Final Lap Weekly podcast, but then also, and that's kind of bringing it back to this show, Kerry also hosts the Whooshin YouTube channel, which is all about EVs, and it's practical EV advice is what Kerry's doing over there, and he's doing a really good job. So we're going to talk about some of his latest videos and his tips and tricks when it comes to owning an EV, and I think everybody's going to enjoy it. And I think, one of the things after you've owned an EV for a while, there's not a lot to do, right? It's, windshield wiper fluid and rotate your tires. Here's the thing. I know when to replace my windshield wiper fluid. I often forget that I need to rotate my tires. And this is kind of one of the things that spurred the conversation to have Kerry on, is because he did a whole show, a whole YouTube episode about it. And I was like, oh, I haven't done that. And I've had my tires for about a year. I should probably get on that. So we just have I don't know. It's a good conversation. It's a fun conversation. I think you're all going to like it. One of the cool things is I am giving the video file to Kerry, and if he wants to host that on his YouTube channel, Whooshin, 100% he can do that. So my recommendation to you would be to follow the link in the show notes, and instead of listening to it on the podcast, on your podcast app, or instead of going to my YouTube channel to watch this video, I would encourage you to go over to Whooshin and watch it there. So I don't know when Kerry's going to have it up, because I'm recording this on Monday night and the show's going out on Tuesday. So it's not really fair to to try and hand this off so late, and for him to put it up on Tuesday. But that would be my recommendation, is save this episode and watch it on the Whooshin YouTube channel. All right. I think I've yapped long enough. Let's go ahead and welcome Kerry to the show. Kerry, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate you reaching out and letting us talk EVs. I love this.
So folks should know that you host the Final Lap podcast, which is a NASCAR podcast, but you also host the Whooshin YouTube channel, which is an EV YouTube channel, centric YouTube channel. Some people might think that is at odds. So do you want to try to square that circle? Is it at odds?
Well, I mean, when I first, let's put it this way. I was a NASCAR fan, a racing fan, a NASCAR host way before I got into EVs. I've been hosting a syndicated radio show called The Final Lap since 2004. So I've been covering the sport of NASCAR for a very long time. I've been a racing fan since I was a kid. Indy cars, NASCAR, the whole thing. I mean, I just love speed. And at the end of the day, I love cars. Then in 2014, I saw a TV commercial for a Toyota RAV4 EV in my local LA market. Those that don't know, that was a partnership with Tesla. So it had a Tesla motor, Tesla battery, Tesla everything except for the Toyota stuff. And my wife was looking for a new car, and they were promoting the fact that you get into the carpool lane solo, and she's driving 50 miles one way to work, 50 miles back. And we had to do something to combat LA traffic. So that was my first foray into EVs, was this Toyota RAV4 EV, and it only got 100 miles to the charge. So she had to charge at work as well, come back. And we made it work. She put like 60,000 miles on that first EV that we got. So the point is I got into EVs after the racing thing, and I have the same thought even to this day. How do those two things go together? And at the end of the day, it's cars. I love cars. So it really doesn't matter whether they're using gasoline or electric. I think the fact that they are using electric and even NASCAR is kind of looking towards that as a possible future. Right now, there's no way. I mean, the batteries are just not there. The charging is just not there to realistically see a NASCAR race with EVs. But we've got teams like Joe Gibbs Racing, a top tier NASCAR team. They built a full on NASCAR Cup Series car electric version. And what they're using it for is pit stop practice. So they're not wasting fuel. They're not putting their team breathing all these fumes in while they're practicing during the week. They just come in, do their pit stop, and leave. It doesn't need gasoline or electric or whatever. So they're already looking to the future. NASCAR has some prototypes out there, but at the end of the day, I don't see it happening in the foreseeable future with current EV technology. Not to say it won't. We do have racing series out there
Hmm.
using electric, and they're doing just fine. But in the world of NASCAR, if you're watching this and you're freaking out, you got a little more time with the fuel, I think.
Yeah, I had Brian Max on, who's also on the Believe Network, and he does Brian Drives Cars. That's his podcast, and he was a former race car driver, current owner of a team, and he said as long as it puts a smile on my face, I really don't care how it's propelled. So I think that's a kind of an important distinction we're kind of looking at you know different ways of propelling the car because there's still hydrogen cars out there. There might be somebody that really enjoys driving hydrogen. I don't know who.
I've got
Yes.
3 Teslas now, so I'm all in on the EV thing. We've been all EV, I think now for 6 or 7 of those years. We're completely all EV, and I can't imagine going back to gasoline. I just love the thrill of sitting down in my Tesla, and it's just so futuristic. It's 5, maybe even 10 years ahead of other cars. The feeling you get with the acceleration, everybody talks about the acceleration of EVs is just amazing. And then, some people are saying, well, you can't road trip them, which is complete bogus. I road trip these cars in winter conditions, in hot conditions, in long conditions, I mean, distance. They are not only easily road trippable, they're actually kind of fun. And for the most part, we've noticed when we do a supercharger stop on a road trip, the car is usually ready for us before we're ready to leave. By the time we take a walk, go to the bathroom, get snacks, look around, all that stuff, the car's done. They charge so fast these days that it's a non-issue.
Yeah, and my daughter has a 2020, I think it's 2020 Model 3, and I think it had maybe 280 miles when it came out, brand new. So now we're looking at maybe 210 with the battery degradation. But they don't have a house. They Airbnb, and because they work remotely, so they'll be in Arizona for a little while, they'll be in San Fran, they'll go to the East Coast, they'll go to Wisconsin, and they're doing that all off of around 210 miles of range at 100%. And of course they're only charging to 80%, so they're doing it with even less range. So it's possible. You just have to plan a little bit.
Well, the funny thing is we started our first Tesla, and I still own it, is a 2019 Model 3 SR Plus, and that original range was 240. It really wasn't. After like 2 weeks, it was down to like 235, then 230, and now it's about 180. Point is, we were road tripping that car back in 2019 when the supercharger network was spotty at best. Like, we actually had to plan our road trips. We're like, okay, we could stop there. We can make it to here. If we level 2 charge here for a little bit, we can make it a little further. And now it's like, with the range of my new Model Y and the supercharger network, we don't think about any of that when we go on a road trip. We just go. It's that easy.
100%. Can I ask you something about your RAV4? Because I've heard this story from
Yeah.
many people, especially in California. Is even though, because that car was so early when it came to electric vehicles, people would still get notices from the state to do the emissions testing on it, and
Right.
it was kind of a pain in the butt to be like, no, this doesn't have, like, I've actually heard stories of people like having to drive it to the emissions testing and they're like, "Where's the tailpipe?" And it's like, "Well, there, I told you guys, it's an electric car."
Yeah. I never ran into that. The cycle of that car was 2012 to 2014, and I was a 2014. So maybe they had ironed that out already. But I heard the same stories that you were talking about that, because it looks like it looked, had the body style, the shell, everything of the regular RAV4. It just, like you mentioned, there's no tailpipe, obviously. And, it looked the same. So it kind of freaked people out.
Yeah, no, 100%. We were talking before we hit record about the Whooshin podcast, which is an amazing name.
I actually own the license plate for my Model 3. It says
Oh
Whooshin
yeah,
on it for California. Yeah.
oh that's awesome. Yeah, so if I see that rolling around, I'll make sure to honk and say hello.
There you go. Hey, I
Um,
know him.
we kind of we were talking a little bit about what your channel's about, and it's more of like an EV. I don't know, lifestyle isn't the right word, but it's like a more of like a holistic EV advice podcast. Like it's good information for folks who are just beginning, like you had said in our pre-interview, but it's also good information for folks who are like myself, who've owned it for a little bit, owned a Model Y for a little bit, or any electric vehicle. So on yours, one of the things that I thought was great was Tesla has all of these overflow lots, and they're usually in mall parking lots because nobody goes to the mall anymore.
Yeah, true.
And you you actually use these overflow lots to pre-check out your car before you picked up your new Model Y Juniper. You want to talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that?
Yeah, I discovered that lot. How did I discover it? Oh, I was taking my teenager to practice driving in the mall parking lot. And I look it over and I'm like, that's an awful lot of Teslas in one spot. So I told him to go drive over there. Don't hit anything, of course, because he was new at the time. And we're looking around and I'm like, this has got to be like the brand new overflow lot because the actual Tesla dealer or service center, whatever you want to call it these days, because it's not a dealer, was half a mile away. So I'm like, I put two and two together and realized this has got to be where the semi trucks drop them off before they actually go to get delivered. And from that point on, I was just trying to create ways to make videos using that lot. And now I still do it because what cooler backdrop for a Tesla channel than having all these brand new Teslas around you for whatever the topic is. And so then when we decided to order the Juniper, this was May of last year, I'm like, you know what? I wonder, because I already knew about the lot, I wonder if it's there. So we were out to dinner one night, the night before taking delivery. And I'm like, let's drive over there and see if our car is there. So I sent the whole family out there with the VIN, and they knew the color, of course, and everybody's looking for the car. And we finally found it. And it gave us a great opportunity to look over the car without the pressure, without the excitement of the next day of taking delivery of the car. Plenty of time, nobody looking over your shoulder, none of that stuff. And I figured later on I would do a video about that. And so, yeah, I've got two videos about that exact thing about checking out your car the day or a couple days before. And I think it gives people a chance to bring that checklist. Everybody knows about the Tesla checklist that you have to bring on delivery day. But again, you're so caught up in the excitement. You're getting a brand new car. You can't wait to drive off the lot. And that checklist goes to waste because you're not thinking about that stuff. You might look at a few things here and there that you thought of, but to have all the time in the world the day before is key. And obviously, I know about my overflow lot. A lot of people, I don't know where they're kept, honestly, probably different places all across the country. I know the Burbank Center, they keep them at the Burbank airport. So you probably don't have access to that, for instance. But it's worth a try. It's worth a look. They might even have it at the service center already the night before. So go there. That's usually open. The parking lots are usually pretty well open, especially during business hours and stuff. So yeah, it's just one of those things that it was like, Eureka, I found gold for Tesla content. And like I said, now I use it for anything because it's a great backdrop just to walk through the lanes of brand new cars. Kind of bummed right now because we had this like weird pollen dust storm the other day, and now all the cars are yellow and dirty. So it doesn't really make a great backdrop at the moment. Maybe somebody go out there and wash them. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I mean, if you wanted to do a post-apocalyptic style video, maybe you get yourself like a sepia tone on your camera, and
There you go.
yeah, it might fit right in.
Yeah, yeah. It's also a good way for me to keep an eye or keep tabs on how deliveries are going. Like, there was a time when between the Juniper and Not, and the lot was empty. And like you mentioned it before the show, people were mad at Elon. And so that lot was also empty. And now, we're seeing the lot is packed. And we're seeing less and less of the S's and X's because those are going away, and more of the Ys. What's really noteworthy, I was there last week, the cheaper Model Y is really taking over this parking lot. And I personally don't understand this car. I think for fleet usage, for businesses, it's a no brainer. But saving 5 grand on the cheaper Model Y is not worth it because you're losing a lot more, in my opinion. And you're getting a way stripped down version when 5 grand over the course of a loan is not much. 5 grand if you're paying cash is technically not much. You've already paid most of the car. Why are you cheaping out on the last 5 grand and missing out so much? The one thing, the one thing that is a deal breaker on that cheaper stripped down Model Y is the sound system. It's only like 7 speakers, no subwoofer, as opposed to like 15 and immersive sound and all that stuff. I'd be like, no.
Yeah, I went to training on Tesla products. They had all of the cars there, with the exception of the Cybercab and Tesla Semi. And in the training, it teased that there was supposed to be the Tesla Semi and the Cybercar there because we're supposed to get robotaxi here in Arizona soon. And I went to my chiefs and I was like, "Can I please go to this training? I'll do a class on it afterwards." And like, yeah. So they paid me to go for 4 hours and hang out with Tesla engineers and stuff. And I was
Nice.
honest. I was like, I'm going to use it for my channel, so I'm going no matter what. But would you guys still pay me to go if I teach a class? And they said yes. But I I walked up to the not. I was kind of talking to a couple of different people that were there, and I just kind of opened up the door of the more affordable, the cheaper one. And I looked inside, and listen, it doesn't have a console in the middle, but it does have a place to put your bag or whatever. And I actually
Right.
kind of thought that was nice. There were certain things, and I didn't get a chance to drive that car because they weren't offering test rides in anything except for the Cybertruck, of course. But the the fact that there were just some niceties in that car that I was kind of surprised by, because like you, when I first saw it announced, I was like, this just doesn't seem like this seems like it's a placeholder for people to see that it can start at a certain price, but then upgrade the car.
Right.
But
To push it
ultimately,
toward the bigger one.
yeah, I like the seats better than I like the seats in my Tesla.
Okay.
They're
Really?
roughly the same comfort, but I like the material better because it's kind of
Gotcha.
it's not that vegan leather. It's more kind of like a cloth recycled. And I thought that in terms of, when you get in Arizona and you're sweaty and you leave sweat marks on the back of your seat, in terms of that would be corrected with those seats. And so there were little bits that I actually really liked about that lower end car, or the cheaper car, I should say. But on the other side, I do agree. Like, it's not so much cheaper that you can't typically spend the extra $5,000 to get something that's better by a significant amount. Like, there are definitely aspects. I was surprised by the car, and I was actually surprised about my reaction when it comes to the car. On that car, when you open up the frunk, there's no plastic
Right.
inside. It's just
Yeah.
open.
Yeah. It's like they forgot.
I was like, you guys tried to save so much money, you couldn't put $3 worth of plastic in here to kind of protect these pieces. But no,
Yeah.
yeah,
Now, as I understand it, because I had comments, of course, people always love commenting on our Whooshin channel on YouTube. Up in Canada, it's a lot more savings, and I get that. In other markets, it's going to be more than the $5,000. So you've got to weigh your options and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, the stuff that has been removed of that lower Model Y, I think, is worth more than the savings. So you got to weigh that out for your own personal finances, of course.
absolutely. And then, looking down the line, and I very, very rarely do this, but looking down the line when these cars become used cars, they're probably even more affordable and give people more access at getting, an electric vehicle versus a 42,000 or $50,000 Tesla.
Yeah, I think the used EV market is a good topic. I mean, it's I think exploding. I keep getting Carvana stuff in my email because I one time wanted to see what the price was on my cars, and they keep bothering me. And they're like, the price of your car has gone up. I'm like, what? They don't go up.
There's so many stories right now about the used EV market, and I've been kind of reluctant to talk about it just because it's so transient in terms of whether the values are high or low or whatever. And by the time I actually report on it, that whole thing could be over with.
Right.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
back in the day during the pandemic, talking about Tesla prices. By the time you actually aired the episode, it might be up $5,000 because they were just so randomly prices were randomly changing.
Yeah, I remember that period. It was like by the week, Tesla would change the price up or down, and you just didn't know when to buy. You don't want to have that pit in your stomach. Oh, I made the wrong choice or timing and all that stuff.
Yeah, and it's not like Tesla, if they drop the price, it's not like they gave you did you a favor and dropped your price if you already pre-ordered it at a higher price. They were like,
Yeah, and they're
sorry.
not going to do anything. They're not going to,
Nope.
go back on it or anything. That's my favorite question when I see online on Facebook. I just bought it yesterday. Are they going to honor the new price? Nope. That's not how it works.
That is not how it works. I wish it was. I mean, because I do understand that Elon's like, well, if you bought it at a cheaper price and the price goes up, we're not going to ask you for more money. And I
Right.
do understand that. But um, when you're the dealer and the automotive maker, and you know that these prices are going up a significant amount or down a significant amount, I think it's kind of
Yeah.
on you to make that at least do something to try and make it right, whether that's a little bit of free FSD for a period of time, or there are things that Tesla could do that would cost them nothing and win a bunch of a lot of love from owners.
I actually like the non-negotiation part of it. I don't like that part of the car buying experience. My dad was huge into the negotiation parts of it. He would like spend the day at the dealership and going back and forth, and he just loved that. And when it was time for him to buy a Tesla, one of the questions was, "So you don't haggle the price?" No, you just buy it online and you show up and you drive it away.
Yep. Yeah.
It baffled him.
We bought my wife's last August. We bought my wife's a Kia Carnival, and I was actually surprised because it's been a while since more than 10 years since we bought a car where we actually had to negotiate on any sort of price. And we knew what we knew roughly what people were paying because everybody has access to that information now, and we went a little below that, and they fought me on it a little bit, and then they completely messed up. My wife only had one day that she could go and look at this car, and then they completely messed up. They didn't have it ready. It was in the back lot. It was dark back there. It was next to a strip club.
My
And it wasn't the original salesperson. He had passed it off to somebody else, and I basically emailed him. He's like, "What did you think?" And I was like, "Hey, man, this is the deal. Like, it was here. You guys didn't have the car ready. I asked you to have the car ready. We didn't go until 7 o'clock at night, so it was plenty of time to get it ready." And they ultimately gave us our price, and then they gave us, some money off of the service plan for the doors and stuff like that that tend to break. But it was a pretty painless experience, other than the fact that one moment where
yeah.
the guy's like, "I don't have the key for this," so we had to wait for somebody to bring us a key to the back lot. Again, it's behind like a Jack in the Box, and there's a strip club over here, and then there's a weed shop over here, and I've got my wife and my daughter, who's 12 at the time. It's like, this is great.
Yeah.
This is a great process.
Well, and that's another thing that it's funny you bring that up. The buying process of other cars, other dealerships, even EVs. I mean, but if you go to a traditional dealership, they want to keep you there as long as possible, so they can keep haggling and wearing you down
Yeah,
and
exhausting.
making you upset, making you want to leave. And that's just not how it works with Tesla. When I delivered my Juniper, if I was on the lot for 10 minutes, it was only because I was doing a video. Like literally, you show up with your phone. If you're unfamiliar with how you deliver a Tesla, you show up with your phone and it walks you through the steps. It helps you find the car. You find the car. you look over the car, you unlock the car with the app, and the car is now yours. You literally drive away. And we didn't even have to talk to a person, a Tesla person. That's it. There is no going back and forth and this and that and upcharges and, undercarriage coating and all this other garbage that you really don't need for the most part. It's, you just show up. It probably would have been 5 minutes, if that. By
Yeah.
the time you show up, open your app, get in the car, go ooh ah, and leave. it's,
Yeah.
that's
No,
how it should be.
it is a really nice process for sure. And it did take me probably 10 days to pick a dealership and pick a salesperson and all that other stuff for my wife's car. But I didn't have to go down except for the one time we looked at it and the one time we bought it. So that there was a positive there, but it's definitely not as easy as just wait, like you said. I think it doesn't take 5 minutes like Elon says to pre-order, but it takes, less than 15 minutes to pre-order. And then I had to go, and my delivery center was way far away from my house. There was one that's closer, that's about 3 miles away from my house, but for whatever reason, I was like down Santan, which nobody unless you're in Arizona. It's a long ways away from my house. I had to
Gotcha.
go drop off the down payment, and I pre-signed some whatever things with the down payment when I was there, but because my
Yeah, that's
wife
the
was
other
going to be
thing.
out of town.
The down payment and everything is in the app as well.
Yeah,
You don't need a check. You just link your bank account, and it's kind of scary and kind of weird and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's all done, and it
yeah,
was painless.
yeah. We chose to drop off the check. That is a good point. All right,
But you don't have
so
to.
no, you don't have to. Let's talk a little bit about your channel and some of your recent videos. One, and I know this isn't exactly recent, but I have the Tesla windshield package. It's $16 or $17 a month. It's cheaper than doing that through my insurance.
Sure.
Um,
As I
and
discovered.
yeah, why don't you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, again, I was driving with my teenager. We're going to lunch. We're in our Model 3, and we're actually following an X. So we're not following a big dump truck of rocks or anything like that. We're just driving along, and bam! I mean, it is the loudest noise when a rock hits your windshield. And it started off really tiny, and I'm like, it's going to grow, I have a feeling, because it's just how it is. And, we went to lunch, and we came out, and it was a little bigger. By the time we got home and it had some sun, some heat buildup, all that stuff, it was, it was a pretty good chunk of the windshield. And by the evening and the hot sun, it was about a foot and a half, 2 feet. And obviously, you can't fix that. If you're not familiar with windshields, you can fix a tiny little maybe rock chip, but when they go sideways and they just get longer and longer and longer, and it's over. You got to replace the whole thing.
Hmm.
So I set up the whole appointment through the app, the Tesla app for the Model 3. I think it was like $1,500, which is a big ouch. Insurance paid for 1,000 of it, so I had to pay the deductible of 500. But as far as the Tesla experience, it was painless. Again, everything through the app. They gave me a date and time. It was like maybe 4 or 5 days out. It wasn't a big deal. They said it would be in and out in one day, and it was a Friday at that. It went south or something did go wrong. I'd lose the car for the weekend. But I dropped it off at 8 a.m. I was driving home by 5 p.m. So it was pretty painless and super, super easy. Yeah, that monthly insurance is probably worth it, but I still didn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I don't pay for it through I don't include it in my insurance because it just raised my prices up so much I was like, man, it is so much. It's $17 a month or whatever. It was $12 when I first signed up for it, but $17 a month is almost a no brainer for, I'd have to drive the car for a long time to pay the $1,500 for the windshield replacement.
At this point, I was kind of playing the odds.
Yeah.
I've had two in my entire life, two, and both were Teslas. One was a rental in Europe. 10
No.
minutes after leaving the rental shop, same bang, Tesla Model Y, and we had a crack. It was probably 4 feet by the time the heat took over and everything. And so I've had two in my entire life. Both were Teslas, kind of playing the odds at this point. And again, the one that got hit was our 2019 with almost 80,000 miles on it. So, it's lasted a long time. And our other two Teslas, I hate to even bring it up, but they've been fine too. So
Yeah, my oldest, she's replaced at least 2 windshields in hers, but again, she does, like, cross-country road trips often.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
I
that's
know
good to
that
hear.
it's not, yeah, it's weird. They have low they might not even have 50,000 miles on their car because they don't go anywhere once they get to where they're going, or
Right.
very rarely, right? But then they'll take these massively long trips, for several hundreds and thousands of miles, and then they'll just sit forever.
Right.
Um, and then I want to kind of round this out because you give, like I said, really good advice on your Tesla channel. And one of the thing, your latest one is about tire rotation, and we were talking earlier before we hit record, that I was like, oh, this spurred me because I have not rotated my tires since I had them replaced last year, which is around June or May. May I had them
Yeah.
replaced,
You
so it's
forget.
about time. Yeah. So, what are your advice when it comes to EVs specifically and replacing tires?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing about my channel that, like you mentioned, I go from the full spectrum, from bare bones, hey, you just got your brand new car, it may be your first car ever, you don't know much about cars, kind of topics like rotating your tires, all the way through, checking out full self-driving, where a lot of people are probably Tesla experts at that point. They're using full self-drive for a long time, and they want to get a few tips that maybe they didn't think about. So I use that full spectrum of topics. It's funny, I get comments on stuff like tire rotations, like, I already know this. Why are you doing videos like that? It's too simple. Well, maybe you know that, but 5,000 other people don't because they just got their car. And like you mentioned, it might be EV specific. And so, in terms of EV specific tire rotation, it's like one of the few things you have to do for maintenance because, brakes should last pretty much the life of the car. Windshield wiper fluid, I guess, windshield wipers. And so, tire rotation is your main serviceable thing that you gotta do once in a while. Now, having said that, I have a 2022 Tesla Model Y Performance staggered tire setup, so you don't do any rotating at all on that. They say to rotate them side to side, but I don't understand. The inside is still going to wear on the inside. It's a whole thing. But anyway, so on the square setup of the Tesla Model Y Juniper, they say to rotate them every 6250. It's right there on the screen. The nav screen tells you exactly when to do that. I forgot, like you, and did it around 8,000, so they actually wore out a little more. But 6250 is what they recommend. I don't think I've ever rotated a car at 6250. I usually between 8 and 10,000. But people like to say that it's because the EVs are heavier. And I've done a lot of comparisons, like gas car equivalents to the Model Y or gas car equivalents to a sedan like Model 3. They're roughly in the same ballpark in terms of weight. So I don't understand that argument. What I do understand is, yeah, the acceleration. If you're having a little too much fun with your car and you're gunning it at the lights and stuff, yeah, you're going to see some different wear than you might not notice. For instance, my wife used to have a lead foot. Now she's slower than molasses, and her tires last forever. So it just depends on how you drive your car uh, for the rotations. So I suggest doing it because it saves you. Tires are expensive, and you want to have them last as long as possible.
Yeah, I think I paid right around $1,500 to replace my tires, and I didn't
It's
even go with the
crazy.
most expensive brand. I tried to go
Yeah,
right in the middle.
yeah. Well, I
So,
mean, if you're just a commuter, you're driving around town, stuff like, you don't need performance tires like the Model 3 Performance comes with. The summer performance, those are going to wear out really fast. And if you're not, tracking the car, what's the point?
yeah, yeah, like I've heard if you get 30,000 miles off of a performance set of tires for any of the Teslas, you've done really
Yeah,
well with those tires. And
yeah.
those things are not cheap. They're
Yeah.
expensive.
On our performance Model Y, so because they're staggered, I only do them in sets of two. She got 55,000 on the fronts because we don't rotate them before we had to change them, and she routinely gets about 33, 34,000 on the rears because those wear out faster. You have to actually redo the suspension in the rears if you want to not wear them out as fast, or put a square setup on it. But I think even then they're kind of angled weird because they're designed to, when you launch, the tires go straight then. So if you're not doing all this launching, because you're not a race car driver, um, they're going to wear out in the inner edges, and they just do. And that's just the way it is. And it's just something you either pay the money for the the upgraded suspension, or you pay the money on tires wearing out all the time. It's probably a wash.
What was the advantage, or why did you choose staggered over the regular, like having
Well, it was a
everything on
Model
the
Y
same?
Performance, and at the time, that's all they had left. We needed
Okay,
a car. All the other Ys were sold out for months. And so we weren't actively looking, hey, we got to get a performance. We need all that speed. And then she just drives it to work. So that particular model came staggered, and that's just the way it delivers. And unless you actually square it out by, a set separately, then that's what you got.
okay, that's how it comes
Again,
from the
it's how the
factory.
performance comes. Yeah.
Okay,
Same thing with the Model 3, I believe, the performance.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. But what do you think? I'm going to have Steve and Allison Sheridan, who you may or may not know, but I'm going to have them on to talk about their new Juniper. So I don't want to go too far into this, but what do you think of the new suspension of the Juniper versus the former suspension?
Night and day, because we have both generations. The Model Y Performance that I just talked about is the first generation Y. Obviously, that's the performance one, so that's even more stiff than the long range. So we're used to that stiff ride, and our Model 3 is incredibly stiff. It's like go-kart stiff. So when I got into the Juniper, it's definitely springy, softer. In fact, there's a bump near my house where our Model 3 and our Performance Y don't even bat an eyelash. It's fine. You could go as fast as you want over this bump. On the Juniper, it's like I think I hit the bump stops on the top of the spring every time I hit that, if I hit it hard. So yeah, there is definitely a softer, smoother ride under normal conditions, and just don't hit those bumps at higher speed. Um, in every aspect of the Juniper compared to the first gen is better, in my opinion. It's quieter, softer ride, better sound, smoother, just like bank vault inside, nice amenities and features and soft touch everything, and it's a better car all the way around. So it's if you're thinking about upgrading from Gen 1 Y to the Juniper, it's a no-brainer. Just go for it. It's great.
Excellent. And Kerry, where would people find you? You know, you got the Final Lap podcast. Where else can people go to find out what you're doing?
Yeah, for the Tesla stuff, for the EV stuff, of course, it's youtube.com/@Wushin, and it's pretty much everywhere else. Facebook, Wushin. So yeah, that's the best way to find us and get a hold of us. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. That's what us YouTubers have to say, right?
And I'm gonna give a lot of props actually to the Final Lap because my early on in my fire career, I used to work with a guy. I'd never been interested in car racing, motorcycle racing. When I was a kid, I was super interested in that, but car racing, I'd never really been interested in it. And I worked with this guy, and if you were sitting down when he was watching NASCAR, and this was Dale Earnhardt, and Jeff Gordon was fairly new at the time, so it's around that time, about 2000 ish. Um, if Jeff Gordon was in the lead and you got up out of your seat, he would tell you to sit down, and he had enough juice
Wow.
to tell you like, no, you don't move. He was the same with the Raiders. Like if the Raiders were up and you did something, it was your fault. So
Yeah, sit down. Jeff is about to turn left a lot.
yeah, no, he was super superstitious about it, or probably still is. But what I found was listening to you and Tom on that podcast. It's Tom, right? Your co-host?
Toby, yeah.
Toby. Sorry, Tom, somebody else. Anyway, listening to you and Toby reminds me of sitting there, and this guy's name was Dar, sitting there and hanging out with Dar and watching racing. And I've listened to, I think, every episode since I found out
Oh,
about you guys. Since,
very cool.
yeah, it's just like you if people are into fantasy sports, you have a whole segment with Rowdy Dragon, which I think is good. And again, I have not sat down. You know, we have a racetrack here in Arizona, obviously with the NASCAR,
Yep,
and I
been there.
haven't. Yeah, no, I've been there a couple of times, but only for 4th of July fireworks.
Okay.
And then at the time they didn't have lighting in the parking lot, so nobody knew where they parked because there's
My.
hundreds, if not, I mean, thousands of people there.
Yeah.
So trying to find your car afterwards was a little bit of a mixed bag. But Anyway, yeah, no, it's really good. So if
Thank
folks are
you.
out there are interested in racing, I highly recommend Final Lap Guest because
Yep. And that's
I
easy.
enjoy
Wherever
it.
you get your podcasts, you can just search for The Final Lap Weekly, or you can go to thefinallap.com or facebook.com/The Final Lap. So the funny thing about that show is Toby and I met in 2010 at the NASCAR Awards Banquet, and we have been friends ever since. And the inside baseball on that one is he lives in Charlotte, North Carolina, because that's where NASCAR is. He's
Mhm.
always at the shops interviewing team members, drivers, executives, all kinds of stuff. He is right in the thick of everything NASCAR. And our show is completely unscripted. We just turn the mics on. We've got some stats in front of us, of course, but we don't have word for word, we must read this and that. It's just us two talking like we're in the same room. And we just have this chemistry that uh, we could turn the mic on at any time and knock out a 40-minute show easily. It's pretty cool.
Wow, it feels way more produced than that. So that's a testament to you guys because it
Thank you.
does. You do definitely have, like I said, it does. It feels like you're sitting with friends and listening. Or podcasts are, I think, more intimate than TV and all that stuff, just because it does feel like you get to know the personalities on each show. But
For sure.
yeah, it definitely feels like you guys have a well, you know, predetermined agenda, and you have notes and all this other stuff. And for you to be say you just turn on the mics and just go, that's super impressive. It sounds really polished.
Thank you. That means a lot. That really does. That's
No,
cool.
it's awesome. Kerry, thank you so much. I'm going to put everything in the show notes so people can easily find it. And man, I'd love to have you on again anytime.
Absolutely. Love to do it again. And thank you so much for having me. And this was fun. I love talking cars and EVs and NASCAR and all that stuff.
All right. I want to thank Kerry for agreeing to come on. It was a really good chat. It's nice when you're talking with another podcaster and you just kind of, chopping it up and having a conversation. Sometimes when you do interviews, while the guest might be interesting, they may not be. They might be just like feel like you're pulling information from them. And, that's fine. That's my job as a host. But when you have somebody like Carrie on who knows how to keep a conversation going and knows how to keep it lively, it's very much appreciated from my point of view, which is the person who has to host the show. Makes my job easier. And Carrie definitely did that for sure. I do want to apologize to Toby. So when I said Tom, I was thinking of Tom Appeal, who hosts the Consumer Guide podcast, which is all about automotives. And we'll hopefully have Tom on soon and his co-host Jill at some point in the future. Um, so Toby Christie, you can find, if you're interested in what he's doing, you can go to tobychristie.com and he's got a whole website on racing and NASCAR. So I would highly suggest you go over there and do that. It's Toby, common spelling, Christie, CHRISTIE.com. And I'll make sure to add that link to the show notes as well. Okay, everybody, you can always support the show at supportkilowatt.com if you want to do such a thing. If you want to, rate and review the show wherever you get it, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify or somewhere else, that's also super helpful. I haven't asked folks to do that for a while. The folks who have done it, thank you very much. Most of you have left very nice comments. Some, especially in the beginning, weren't as positive, but yes, the show has gotten better. So if you left a comment a long time ago and it was quasi-negative, consider leaving another one to see if maybe it's more to your taste. But again, I want to thank everybody for listening. I hope you all have a great week, and I will talk to you on Friday.